Hi everyone, here's part two. We get through the rest of these. So we were just talking about carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are a product of photosynthesis. They originally come from plants, and we can have simple carbohydrates, which are easy to digest, like starch and sugars. And then we can have complex carbohydrates, which are cellulose, and that is plant fiber. So remember that cereal grains are generally high in starch. They are commonly fed to monogastrics. In fact, 70% of the diet of a laying hen is corn. So we grind corn. It's highly palatable. It is the most energy dense feed that we can feed livestock. So it has the most calories per pound and therefore is the most efficient grain to feed. Cellulose, on the other hand, is fiber, and it is low in digestibility for monogastrics. A monogastric is a pig or a chicken. It has a single stomach, a single chambered stomach. Cellulose is plant fiber, hard to digest, unless you have some bacteria or microorganisms in your digestive system that allow you to break down cellulose. So ruminant animals are the four-chambered digesters. They have a four-chambered stomach, and that four chambers, the front chamber, the rumen, contains microorganisms that produce an enzyme called cellulase that breaks down the cellulose molecule. And so ruminants can digest hay, silage, and forages, whereas a pig and a chicken cannot. They're very poor cellulose digesters because they lack the microorganisms and they lack the enzyme to break down cellulose. The hindgut fermenters are the inefficient digesters of fiber, and you're going to remember these guys because they break down fiber in their colon, which is their hindgut or their cecum, and that is horses, and then my other favorite is guinea pig. So horses, guinea pigs, and rabbits are all hindgut fermenters. Eat high roughage diets or diets high in cellulose, but they have that large cecum that allows them to digest a lot of fiber in their diet. Lipids, also known as fats. Lipids are the most energy dense nutrient available. So if you want a quick boost of energy, fat is harder to digest, but it contains more calories per pound than carbohydrates does. So it is very concentrated in energy, and that is part of the reason why fats are fattening. So the basic structure of a fat is a triglyceride with 3 fatty acids and a glycerol. You're going to learn that in organic chemistry. Lipids can be saturated or unsaturated. So for all your purposes for this class, saturated fatty acids are the one the doctors tell you not to consume too much of, because saturated fatty acids sometimes cause hardening of the arteries, plaque in arteries, and things that make you unhealthy. So it just so happens that all animal fat all ruminant animal fat is saturated fats. I think all animal fats are saturated. But ruminant animals, they can eat unsaturated fats, but the microorganisms turn their fat into saturated fats. So that's why sometimes people say that you shouldn't eat very much red meat because it contains a lot of saturated fats. Chicken and turkey, on the other hand, are lean, and they can be lean, and they don't contain as much fat. So that is the two forms of fatty acids. Unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. So those are like vegetable oil, olive oil, things like that. And those are usually from plant sources. Saturated fats are firm to the touch, like a cube of butter or the fat on a nice T-bone steak. That's all saturated fats. Not too good for your arteries, but sure tastes good. Okay, and then we have minerals. Minerals are dietary essentials. There's 2 categories of minerals. I already said this earlier. There's macro minerals. Macro minerals are needed in large quantities, and they are components of your body tissue. For example, calcium is a macro mineral, as you might know. Calcium and phosphorus are both required for skeletal formation. Microminerals are needed in tiny amounts, but they are essential. And if you have lack of a trace mineral or a micro mineral, sometimes you have animals that have deficiency symptoms. So in horses, we can have a selenium toxicity. Selenium is a micro mineral, or a selenium deficiency. In sheep too, and goats. Sometimes our soil is deficient in selenium. So we have to give baby lambs and baby goats, when they're 1 day old, we give them a shot of bovine selenium, and that helps them with their immune system and helps them survive until they can access enough food to be able to get some selenium from that. So that's why it says supplementation is variable by region. So minerals can be toxic in large amounts, and they can be deficient, and you can have diseases or infertility, a loss of life like an abortion, because animals don't have a proper diet. Many times it's caused by mineral deficiency. So when we talk about, I'm not sure what this slide is talking about, when we talk about minerals, most of the time when you buy a bagged feed for an animal, like a bag of layer pellets for your chickens or a bag of dog food for your dog, it has already been formulated and balanced for the typical animal that you're feeding. So that is important to remember. So here are the macro minerals, ones you need in large quantities. You should probably take a look at that. I think there might be a question on your homework about that. And the micro minerals, some of which you probably never heard of, like chromium. Oh, that was in a movie one time. Or iodine. I just got done talking about selenium. So vitamins, on the other hand, are necessary for life. Vitamins for most all animals, they need vitamins A, D, E, and K, and vitamin C and vitamin D oftentimes are not supplemented in livestock's diets. I don't know, D is kind of debatable here, but most animals do not need vitamin C. The only animals that need vitamin C are monkeys and animals that are in the kind of human category. We cannot make our own vitamin C. Primates need vitamin C. And here's a weird one for you to remember. Guinea pigs are the other animal that need vitamin C added to their diet. Vitamin D is a vitamin that you have to have in order for calcium and phosphorus to be taken up by the body to form a skeleton. So vitamin D deficiency causes a disease called rickets. And that disease is common in animals that are kept in an environment where they cannot see sunlight, because vitamin D is the sunlight vitamin. And we either supplement it in the animal's diet, or we have to give them exposure to the sun, where your sun the sun can actually make its own, your skin can actually make its own vitamin D. So vitamins are needed in small amounts. When they're absent or deficient, you can have a specific deficiency disease. So there's lots of diseases that that are result of poor nutrition. But most of the time, again, when you buy a bag of feed and you feed it in a reasonable amount of time, even if you have laying hens that are inside a barn and they don't go outside, they will get enough vitamin D from the feed because we add vitamin D to the feed. So vitamins are categorized as fat soluble or water soluble. Fat soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K, and water soluble vitamins are vitamin B, which there's a B complex, so lots of vitamins, and vitamin C. So, okay, so this is a little bit of a review, and I will zip through it. So concentrates are high in energy, and those are cereal grains, grain milling byproducts, roots and tubers like potatoes, and food processing byproducts. For example, DDG, dry distillers grains, is a very common food byproduct that we feed to livestock. Concentrates can also be protein, so they can contain energy, carbohydrates, so they contain protein. Probably the most important protein feed that we feed livestock, all livestock, is soybean meal. Soybean meal has the highest amount of protein of any of the oilseed meals. We feed dairy cows cottonseed meal because it is high in protein and high in fat, and it helps with the fat content of the milk. Grain, legumes, peas and beans really aren't fed to livestock too much unless they're a byproduct. And then we can also feed bypass proteins, which bypass the rumen and go right to the digestive system, right into the true stomach. So roughages are things I already showed you: pasture, grasses, legumes, silage, dry forage, range, things like that. So we can add feed additives. Sometimes we add vitamins and minerals to the feed. We have to make it balance. I told you earlier, the amino acids sometimes can be added to a chicken feed and pig feed rather than increasing the amount of protein, which is expensive. Soybean meal is expensive. We'll just add extra amino acids like lysine and methionine. And then we can also buffer the grain. So buffers help reduce the acid, and that prevents acid indigestion in ruminant animals, which is a reason why cattle go off feed. And we can also add preservatives so that the feeds do not lose their nutritional value when they're stored. So when we feed grains and feeds like silage that are fermented, they contain quite a lot of water. And so sometimes we have to adjust our nutritional analysis for the amount of water. Really, like if you're feeding grain to your livestock, it doesn't contain that much water. I'm going to skip this part. This part was in here. I'm just going to skip down here. Okay, so what we want to make sure that we do with a sound nutrition program is we want to provide a constant, high quality water supply. And this is kind of rude, but I will tell 4-H and FFA kids this. If you wouldn't drink out of your sheep's water bucket, then why are you making your sheep drink out of it? So water needs to be clean, fresh, and when you have a chance to manage your own farm, make sure you put the water trough in the shade. Because who wants to drink hot water on a hot day? It doesn't help cool you down. So cool water in the shade, you'll get better feed conversion, your animals will be healthier and happier. So one of the things we do with dairy cattle is we give them a TMR, totally mixed ration. So we mix corn silage, cottonseed meal, alfalfa, all in a big feed mixer. And that mixer is like it's like a hand mixer you make cookies with. And pour that out in front of the cows. And that way we don't have to feed them individual ingredients. So a TMR is a totally mixed ration, and we use that to feed dairy cows so they produce a maximum amount of milk. Those are mainly for cattle. And I think that's pretty much it for this slide. I'm sorry I skipped a couple of things, but I didn't think you really needed to learn how to calculate the dry matter of a feed. Okay, well, I'm going to stop there and call it quits, and hopefully you learned something about roughages and concentrates and protein and carbohydrates and nutrients required to feed livestock.